you shouldn't compare yourself to somebody else. You should, be alongside them and lift them up.
Hello, art friends, and welcome back to the Art Journey podcast. I'm your host, Alex Agosto, and welcome. I'm just so excited because, this episode marks, I think, a month doing the podcast, at least posting the podcast. I've actually been recording these episodes for months, in case you didn't know. But yeah, I'm just super stoked at, you guys coming in and offering your amazing support. I've been having a blast, and just thank you so much for listening and tuning in. So, at the time of recording this, it is the holiday season. Next week is Christmas. Can you believe that? I certainly cannot believe how fast the year has gone by, and the fact that I have this podcast out after planning it for so long, and just what a better time of year to look back and reflect on how far we've come, and a time to look forward as well. And I'm hoping this podcast is serving as inspiration for the things you yourself could achieve in the future, and hopefully inspiring you to take steps forward towards crafting a future that you love. So yeah, I know I've been getting a lot of great feedback that this is inspiring you guys, and I just want to continue inspiring you into the new year. So on today's episode, I have a really special guest. She's this amazing artist that I found on Instagram a while back. She specializes in doing these really cute, starry animal and person portraits, like characters. And she works mainly in gouache, if I'm not mistaken. And her art is just super dreamer inspired and very starry and galactic and beautiful. And I'm just really excited because I really love this artist. Her name is Danielle Boinay, and you're gonna get to know her a little bit. She's a super positive soul, and it was so uplifting to talk to her, so I cannot wait for you guys to hear about her story. But you know what? That's enough of my rambly intro, and why don't we just get into this interview, shall we? Hi, everyone. So I would like to offer a warm welcome to Danielle Boinay. Hi, Danielle. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited to talk to you today. Like I was saying earlier, I've been following you on Instagram for a while, and it's kind of refreshing to see someone doing something kind of different with their art. You offer things other than prints, like very creative products, and it's just so cool to see.
Oh, thank you.
So let's take this back to the beginning. I ask this to every artist, and every artist's answer is very similar, but I'm assuming you were into art when you were younger, right? When you were a kid?
Yes, I was. I have been drawing and doing all that for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, and I actually read on your website that your mother was an artist. Am I right?
Yeah, she is a fantastic artist, and my dad actually is as well. And although they only do it as a hobby, I've always looked up to them as artists. So we have creativity in the family.
Yeah, that's really cool, and actually not very much heard of from the people I talk to who are artists.
Oh,
Usually,
really?
yeah, a lot of the people I talk to, they are the artist of the family, and it's the same case in my family as well.
Oh, okay. I actually have a sister who's a fine art painter, and
Oh my
a couple
God.
other sisters who can draw, but they've chosen different routes. So it's in the family.
That's kind of mind-blowing. So, was it your parents that kind of inspired you to get into art?
Yeah, so my dad, he's very talented at painting, but he has very little, like he doesn't have very many paintings that he's
Mm-hmm.
kept. But my mom, on the other hand, has just uh, a ton of different sketchbooks from high school when she was younger, and I would just pore over those as a kid and get inspired, and just want to go back into my room and just draw and sketch all day.
That's so cool. I cannot imagine how awesome must have been to grow up in such a creative household.
It was great, and having creative parents, they gave me and even my siblings free reign to just explore that creative gene that we have.
Which is so fortunate, right? Because I feel like a narrative we are fed a lot in the art community is the one where you're the lone artist without any support. But it's always nice to hear of someone whose parents not only supported them, but, they themselves kind of led creative lives.
Yeah, definitely. And especially if you find yourself as the lone artist in the family, a lot of the times it's looked down on as a career, like not a serious job. And
Mm-hmm.
even though my parents didn't do it professionally, my mom, especially, she also sews a lot. So she would create like clothing and whatnot, and then sell it just on the side. So it was nice for them to, they never said like, oh, you can't do art as a job, like you shouldn't go to art school. And they're just really supportive.
That's really nice to hear. And I feel like that is something encouraging for people to hear because I've heard of a lot of young artists who actually keep their love for art or their wants for pursuing it kind of to themselves because they're scared their parents won't accept it. But I feel like you'll never know if you don't bring it up. And I think in most cases, your parents just want to see you do what you love, even if they aren't artists. And I feel like we need to hear kind of more of these supportive narratives for people to feel more encouraged.
Yeah, definitely. And especially today, there are so many jobs that you could do in art, whether you want to be a children's book illustrator or a graphic designer, which was how I started out.
Hmm.
There's just so many avenues to get into that it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be that person that has to sell a $10,000 painting. Although if you do, that's great.
I
But
know.
there are just lots of different aspects to art that, very real jobs that you can break into.
Yeah, that's completely true. And so, when did you start taking art seriously? When did you decide that, doing it for fun was all good and well, but you wanted to actually dedicate yourself to it?
Well, as I said, like I grew up doing art and just spent all my time drawing. But the first time I actually thought about making it a career was after school. I interned at Intel, and
Wow.
just because I had some connections there, and it was a good paying job, and they were a great company to work for. But I found during my internship, when there was downtime, I would be drawing, and slowly that built into me just wanting to. I just thought, if I'm going to be at a job, I want to be able to be at one where I could be drawing and creating. And so I quit Intel and I dove straight into like starting up my own freelance graphic design. And it took a while to build, but it was one of the best things I did.
Wow. So you like really jumped into it.
Yeah, I did. I didn't know anyone that was in that field. I just remember walking into a Hot Topic one day and looking at
Hmm.
the graphic tees for, bands and musicians and thinking to myself, I could do this. And that's how I started. I just put together a bunch of designs that I thought were good for bands that I loved, and I sent them out to so many different record labels and musicians and companies just to hear back from like one or two to get me started.
That's amazing. Talk about initiative.
Yeah, it's a lot of rejection up front, but I remember the first, because I ended up working in t-shirt design for a long time, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But the very first graphic tee that I did was for Fallout Boy, and I have it in my
Wow.
portfolios. Like my first t-shirt design, my first official paid job.
Heck
And
yeah, that's like a forever portfolio piece.
yeah, yeah, it was a really good accomplishment, and I just remember being really excited seeing it on. It was actually sold on their record label's website, Fueled by Ramen, and just going on there and refreshing, seeing when they were going to post it, and when they did, it was very exciting.
That's amazing. So, um, since that happened between your internship and you immediately jumped into that, did you go to art school?
I did that. So that happened after school. So
Mm.
since I was doing art ever since I was little, I knew that I wanted to study it in school.
Mhm.
And I didn't go to an official art school. I went to BYU, and they had a really good art program. And
Mm.
so I finished that art program, but I still wasn't sure what career I would segue into, which is why I took
Mhm.
that internship at Intel. So I kind of think about where I wanted to go. And I never thought that it would take me into apparel design, but that's where it took me, and it was great. Um, but uh, I ended up having coworkers who were fantastic artists that went to expensive art schools, and they were still paying off their student loans years later. And
Oh yeah,
I,
I'm there.
yeah, and that's fine. Like I I kind of always wanted to go to an art school, like a really nice one,
Mhm.
but I ended up just going to a normal, like a non-expensive school,
Yeah.
getting the art program. I guess what I'm saying is you can choose to go through art school, and that's fantastic. You'll probably get amazing
Mhm.
connections. But if that's not for you, or you can't afford that, you can totally break out on your own without an official education in art.
Mhm. And something I say a lot to people now because 20, hindsight is 2020. I don't really think for certain degrees in art you don't even really need the fancy education because a lot of times what they're teaching you is just how to fine tune the fundamentals
Right.
because at the end of the day, every career is based on having a grasp of the fundamentals. And as long as you can get into a program, regardless of the prestige of the school, that has courses that are focused on fine tuning your fundamentals, that's really all you need. Like, I think about it now, and the reason I went to school was because my major was highly specialized. I went
Hmm.
in for jewelry design.
Oh yeah.
But honestly, I think I could have gone without. I actually never worked in jewelry design. I ended up changing my career path a lot. But B, I actually once I got to school, I realized a lot of the things I was learning there were just kind of fine tuning what I had learned with my mentor.
Right.
And, that's what I tell a lot of people. Like, art school is fun. It's really fun to be surrounded by people with your interests. And yeah, depending on where you go, you can make your connections, but it's not really necessary, especially if you're very applied,
Yeah,
to your
exactly.
studies.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what, when I said that, I had coworkers that went to fancy art schools and had big student loan debts. I was in
Mm-hmm.
the same position as them, and I had, because I don't, if you don't know, BYU is kind of a cheap school, and had my loans paid off. But it's so true, especially in today when you can educate. I mean, education is very important, but if there's something
Mm-hmm.
that you're trying to figure out how to do, you could just search a YouTube video and learn it. And um, yeah, like you said, it's really about the fundamentals, and if you can find that in a school that's not as fancy, then that's great.
Oh yeah, and you'll save so much heartache because trust me, those loans, like the fact that I went to art school and I didn't even end up working in that major,
Hmm.
like like
Yes.
again, I tell people really think about it. Like, do you need to go to the fancy art school or do you just think it'll add legitimacy? Which I'm sure like for certain fields, yeah, I feel like maybe a name on your diploma matters, but honestly, I think for what most of us are doing, it nobody might even ever find out where you went to school.
Yeah, and it's yeah, and like I guess certain names of some schools are look sexy on a resume,
Mhm.
but if you can learn what you need to know elsewhere, then do it. And like my education, I'm not saying my education was invaluable. It was great. I learned Photoshop and
Of course.
Illustrator and all those things that I didn't know before. But I didn't have to get into massive debt for it, is what I'm saying.
Exactly. And so, the way I'm following, so right after school, and you did this internship, and you decide to kind of do your own freelance graphic design. Um, is that what you continued on doing, or did you move on to any other jobs in art?
So I just kind of stayed on that path for a while. I didn't think about being a fine art painter or getting into galleries or anything. I just, at the time, right out of college, I was really into music and I was really into going to concerts and stuff. So the idea of being able to design graphic tees for my favorite bands just sounded so fun. And so I grew up in Portland, so that's where I ended up after school for a
Mm,
little bit, and I just looked up local Portland bands after um, designing that T-shirt for Fall Out Boy, thinking, oh,
yeah.
I could really do this for a living. And so I worked for some local bands, some California bands, and then from there, I ended up coming down to California because of all the design opportunity, like full time job work down here,
Mhm.
and ended up working for a company called Mighty Fine, which does graphic
Oh
tees.
my god, I love them.
Yeah, I worked for Mighty Fine, and then I worked for Hybrid Apparel, and after that, Junk Food. And
Wow.
spent a long time. I think 8 years I spent in the apparel industry designing graphic tees.
That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it was really fun. I learned so much. I learned so much. It was great.
I'm sure. I feel like that job must have really fine-tuned your eye for, composition.
Yeah, it did. It yeah, it taught me layout really well, and I was able to build on what I learned in school as far as that goes. And um it's like second nature now because I spent so much time doing it. But I still enjoy it. I don't do as many t-shirt designs as I used to, just because I'm
Mhm.
focusing on my independent art, but I still enjoy it.
Yeah, and on that, segue, when between, your jobs in graphic design and your business, like, when did you start your business?
So I had been wanting to do it for a while. I My last full-time job I had was for junk food clothing, and it
Mhm.
was great, but I'd kind of reached my maximum potential at that company, and I was really itching to give my own art a chance. And I was looking for the right opportunity, and then ended up having my son, who is now 3, and I felt like, a lot of the times when you do art, you can do it from home. So I thought this is the perfect time for me to be able to spend time with him at home and work on building my little business. So that's where I
Yeah.
started it.
And so when you started it, so something that comes up a lot when we're talking on the subject of starting your own business, especially in today's time, the first question I get people asking a lot is, did you have a following when you decided to go solo?
I did not. I didn't even have an art Instagram when I went solo.
Wow.
Yeah, it's taken a while to build it up a little bit, but I had my own family and friends that knew I was an artist. They've seen my work, they liked it, so I had a lot of support there in the beginning. But I just spent a lot of time trying to create and to post to social media to kind of build that following.
Yeah. So, when you were starting, you didn't have your following. What strategies did you use to get your business up off the ground?
It took a lot of strategy. I think that I really kind of pushed it on my. I have a personal Instagram, and I really kind of pushed it onto my family and friends to join, follow me, support me, sort of thing. I took a couple free and also paid online seminars that other makers and artists who found success on Instagram put on, so I could learn the tricks and the tools of the trade. And just kind of started following other people and seeing what they do so that I can do it for myself.
That's a really good thing to bring up because a lot of people really discount those like online seminars and like classes like Skillshare, but they have so much to offer. They're taught by people who are doing what you want to learn how to do, and it's so accessible.
Right. Yeah. And they're just happy to share. Like they want to share in their success and help you get there. And so if you could take advantage of that, then that's great.
Yeah, exactly. And so, what were kind of the first things that you sold in your business when you started it off?
I'm trying to think back. I think it's just I sold prints. I started doing digital illustrations in Photoshop and sold a couple prints. And it I actually really struggled to find the current style that I have now of, being inspired by the stars and by space. The job that I had at the apparel companies, they teach you to you can use your own style, but a lot of the times they want you to mimic other styles. And so when I started to get into creating my own art for my own business, I was like, I don't really have a style. I can do all these other styles, but what's mine? So
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time just being inspired by other artists, trying out different things, seeing what works best, like different techniques, different mediums, and over time landed on where I'm at today.
That's really cool to hear because that is something people are always so concerned about, finding their style. Everyone's so scared of looking like everyone else, but I was hearing something really interesting on a YouTube video I was watching yesterday where this artist was saying that when you're trying to find your style and you're experimenting and kind of mimicking the looks of like maybe your favorite
Mhm.
artists, over time you're going to unintentionally inject your own style into it.
Mhm.
You know, you can follow what other people are doing as much as you want, but in the end, it's still gonna look like you because your hands are not the same as the other artist's hands.
Yeah,
And so I
exactly.
think that's a really good way, like you said, to try to find your style. So would you recommend that as a method for people finding their style?
Yeah, I would. I would say though, what you shouldn't do is pick your favorite artists and try and work in their style and then try and sell it because that's their style and you don't want to steal
Mhm.
that from them. But if you're trying to find your style, it's totally okay to use them as as like practice and
Inspiration, yeah.
inspiration and just to kind of work and see what you could do because I really love there's a lot of really awesome female animators at Disney right now, and I really love all of their
Mhm.
styles. And when I was going through trying to figure out how I wanted my art to look, I would try and paint the way they painted, and I was never satisfied with it because I wasn't, like you said, my hands weren't their hands, and I just felt like I wasn't as good as them. And then slowly, once I started developing my style, I realized that it's okay to not look like those favorite artists, and you don't want to look like that. You want to look your own um, your own aesthetic, and you want to be you.
Yeah, and I feel like you said, it's never good to draw too much inspiration from one place because inevitably you are going to get called out for copying.
Hmm.
But I think a good method for finding your own style, and I'm still searching for my own style, is to find different fountains of inspiration, different artists, and grab pieces that you like from each of them and kind of mash them all together into one thing. Like in the beginning, it's probably going to look weird because you're
Yes.
mashing a lot of things that don't match together. But eventually, with practice, your eye gets better at how to combine all these different aesthetics you like into one thing. I feel like that's how people subconsciously form their styles.
Yeah, and sometimes you can see certain artists pull, like you could say, oh, that artist pulled inspiration, but they definitely didn't copy. And yeah, as long as you're not copying, then it's really good if you use your favorite artist as inspiration as practice and whatnot. And just don't be worried if you feel like you're not as good as your favorite artist. A lot of the artists that I love, they don't use black outlines in their art.
Mhm.
They for the if they're like outlining the skin, they'll just pick a darker color than the skin tone to outline the skin.
Mhm.
And for me, I did that for a while, and I love black outlines. So I told myself, it's
Yeah,
okay. Just do what you love, and that's going to be your style.
exactly. It's like don't fight what you like,
Hmm.
because I feel like a lot of people beat themselves up when they can't get things to look like what the mainstream style is.
Hmm.
But honestly, if whenever you fight against yourself, you're just kind of delaying your progress.
Yes. And, if you don't fight against it, and you'll be more authentic to people who are looking at your art, and different because you don't look like everybody else's art, like the popular thing that's happening out there.
Exactly. And one of the things I like about your style is that it's very distinctive. Like I feel like I know a piece of yours no matter where I see it. And like your so for people who haven't seen her art, she has a lot of like animals and popular characters and stuff, but they're all consistently with the theme of the stars. And your style of stars is very, very you. What made you kind of choose that as being kind of like that tying factor to all your art?
Well, like you, I love galaxies. I love stars. I married someone who went to space camp as a kid and also
Oh my
loves
god.
galaxies and stars. And we actually named our son Orion after the constellation. So
Cute.
I just drew a lot of inspiration from my little baby boy and from the love that we have, and wanted to incorporate that into my art. And I found that when I would paint these starry skies, I would just kind of lose myself in the process. And
Mhm.
I just felt really good doing it. And I knew that because of those feelings, I knew that this is how I wanted my art to look.
Yeah. So you kind of took something that you've always liked in your life and just injected it into what you were doing.
Yeah, and there's galaxies are very in right now. There's a lot of galaxy art out there. And I was trying to
Mhm.
find a way to do it that looked different. And one of my favorite colors of paint to use is that deep blue, that deep
Oh,
indigo
yes.
blue.
It's
It's so
gorgeous.
pretty. And then putting the white star texture over top of it just made it pop. And I thought, this
Mhm.
is the way that I'm going to do it.
Yeah, and so did you have to kind of go through different iterations to find that to like settle on it?
Yeah, I have some early paintings of that sort of style where it's a little bit different than it is now. And even now, it's always evolving. And to me, if I like laid out all those starry paintings I've done, I could see the progress that I've made on it. And maybe
Yeah.
next year it'll look even more different than it does now. But yeah, it did look a little bit different early on.
Well, that I would be interested in seeing kind of how like you settled on this style cuz it screams you. Like I know when I see your pieces on my feed.
Oh, thank you. That's good to know, because as an artist, like, that's what you work for. You want to find a signature style.
Oh yeah, and I feel like you're definitely nailing it every time. I feel like you can really tell that it comes from you, which I know is a lot of people's worries when they're creating.
Right.
But you've definitely I feel like you've found a balance between kind of creating a consistent style while still maintaining, you know, interest. It's never boring, which is another thing I think people are scared of. They're scared of like using same elements too often and, becoming like stuck.
Yeah.
But I feel like you've managed to do it in a way where it's not boring at all.
Oh, thank you. I took a lot of inspiration from the author Maria Brophy. She is married to Drew Brophy, who does surfboard art down in, I think, San Clemente. And
Hmm.
she advises upcoming artists on how to run their business. So she wrote a book called Art, Money, Success. And it's all about business for artists who don't have a business mind. And that is definitely me. And in that book, one of the things that she talks about is finding your niche. And when I was working on my style, I just felt like it was so broad. And I just thought, like,
Hmm.
I need to narrow it down. And a lot of artists will just do one thing, like paint the same beach scene over and over, which is
Yeah.
really good. Like, that will work for them. for me, I like to do a lot of different things, and I want to paint animals, and I want to paint starry girls, and I want to put
Mm-hmm.
them on pouches and put them into make them into pins. And so I was trying to figure out how to narrow it down and find my niche, but also still have those options of doing, an array of things. And by injecting my starry style just across the board, even for like fan art, like creating, like for
Mm-hmm.
how I did Sally from The Nightmare Before Christmas for a Halloween art show, and I did her in my starry style. And so I love that. Like, as you said, if you are scrolling through and you see one of my images, you'll see the blue with the stars, and it's me. And it
Mm-hmm.
took a while to cultivate that, but that's a way that if you're like me and you want to do more than one thing, you could just find an element that's your signature and just put it across the board, and it'll just tie everything in.
Yeah, that's a really good tip for people who are indecisive.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that you talking about the Sally fan art, I really loved this piece you did. It was Alice in Wonderland, and you did it in a frame of roses, and you painted one of the roses
Oh
red.
yeah, yeah,
I
that one was
I
fun.
still die when I think about that. It's one of those, man, why didn't I think of that the kind of things? But that's one of the things I admire about your I guess more so your business is that I feel like you're constantly coming out with very creative products. You either have pretty creative ways of selling your originals. I know for a while there you were selling your originals in hand painted
Mm-hmm.
frames, but you also, one of my favorite products are your petrified wood
Oh
paintings.
yes,
And then you also did recently that Halloween advent calendar.
yes.
How do you come up with all this stuff? Like, how do you keep coming up with creative products?
Well, I just am trying to think of, if I were a buyer, what would cause me to buy some original art. And uh, the paintings that I do, I love finding beautiful Baroque frames for them. And that Alice one was just too good. It was white roses, and as you said, I painted some of the roses red. And in the
Mm-hmm.
actual painting of Alice, she was holding a red paintbrush. And
Yes.
just trying to think outside of the box is really good, and ways that you could push yourself in your art. And it's just it sets you apart from other artists. I think if you could find a unique element that you're going to inject into your art, like the petrified
Mm-hmm.
wood, I really love crystals, rocks, and minerals. I like to go to gem
Mm-hmm.
shows and hunt around for different things I can use. And I bought a little piece of petrified wood back in May, and it was just sitting on my desk, and I was brainstorming about ways to make my art unique, and I looked at it and I thought, oh, I bet I could paint on this. And that's where it was born, and people seem to really love it because you don't see it out there. You see people painting on slices of wood that isn't petrified, just natural wood,
Mm-hmm.
and it's beautiful. But to have like a stone that you painted on is a nice little piece of art, and it's like really high quality.
Mm-hmm.
And the advent calendar, I my dad is from Switzerland, and we grew up with a lot of Swiss German, like traditions and whatnot. So we always had Christmas advent calendars, and I love Halloween. And so I thought to myself, I'm going to do something fun each year for my shop. I'm going to make a Halloween advent calendar, and it's my son loves it. He had so much fun opening one each day, and I can't wait to do one next year too. It's going to be so fun.
Yeah, I loved that because, like, of course, we all see Christmas advent calendars, even though they're actually not super common in the US, I feel.
Yeah.
Or like I always think of them as a concept, a Christmassy concept, but I don't think I've actually seen many. But seeing a Halloween one was even more like, oh my god, this is so cool.
Yeah, you don't see the Halloween ones anywhere. And if I'm being really honest, the Halloween advent calendar didn't have as much success as I would have liked. I sold a fair
Mm,
amount, but I think that people in the US they didn't either understand the advent calendar idea,
mm-hmm.
or they just weren't interested. But that's okay. I was looking at the advent calendar the other day and thinking, even though it wasn't as successful as I had hoped, I'm still really proud of myself that I did it because it took a lot of time and planning to figure it out. And I love the way it turned out. And I'm so happy for the people that bought them because they really loved them too. And I was just really excited that I saw through to the end of that project. And sometimes that's more important than finding immediate success with something.
Yeah, especially when I feel like whenever you're being creative about things, like one of the my past interviews was with her name is on Instagram is Luna Soul. I don't know if you've heard of her,
Yeah.
but she does a lot of products with fan art. But she says that one of her favorite things to do is making products of fan art that are of characters that are not the main
Yes,
characters.
I love that.
And she was saying how it's always a risk because you could either find great success because it's a character nobody can find merch on, and so it could either be your most successful product, or it could be the one that tanks
Hmm.
because nobody cares about the character.
Right.
But I feel like when you're running your own business, you kind of have to take those risks because you have to kind of find that balance of like doing things that excite you and motivate you, and trying to find that common ground with what excites and motivates your audience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of risk taking and you just got to believe in
Mhm.
yourself, and if you feel passionate about something, you just need to go for it. My sister, who's the fine art painter, she and I always talk about how um a lot of the times we'll produce something that we love and we feel like it's amazing and it won't sell. It'll just sit there. And then the piece that we don't like, that we don't think that we did very good on, will sell immediately. So you never know what's going to speak to somebody. And you just have to, any quote unquote failures that you have, they're not failures. They're just little like stepping stones to a larger success, and they're the experiences that mold you and shape you and kind of um, hone your art so that it gets better.
Exactly. So I imagine in the time you've run your business, you must have tried so many different products.
Yeah, I have, and I don't regret any of them. I really don't. And it's sometimes hard as an independent artist to put down money on a new product that you're not quite sure how it's going to go,
Mhm.
because you can run, polls in your Instagram stories and ask people what they think. But when it comes to actually buying, those people might not, they could say, yes, I love that. And then you may not sell that many. And that's okay. Um, just
Mhm.
think of it as a chance to keep that inventory and sell it throughout the year or sell it in person at a show. And it's okay to hold on to things for a little bit, because all it takes is that one buyer to walk in and to love the piece and to just scoop it up.
Exactly. It always takes that one person.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's also not exactly that it, like you said, quote unquote, failed. Maybe it just wasn't the right time.
Yes, and especially if you're basing your business only on social media, it's hard to get it out there, just because of the algorithm, at least on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, and people may really love it, but they may not see it at all. So it's that's why I think it's important to kind of spread your business elsewhere, like definitely be on social media, but then also look at various events, markets you could sell at, brick and mortar stores. Maybe you can walk in and ask if you can sell some of your prints at the front of the counter. There's lots of ways to do it in person without having to own your own shop.
Yeah. So, in that vein, other than running your shop, do you have any other flows of income?
Yeah, so I still take some graphic design projects on the side. And I try not to take as many anymore, just because I want to focus my effort on my shop. But I still do that. And then I also have been done a handful of shows this year. I'm going to be at Designer Con coming up in November. Very excited
Ooh.
for that. It's supposed to be a big show full of just amazing artists. And
Mm-hmm.
I am usually involved with the Fan Alley events down in Anaheim. put on by Marissa Sudo, who's also an amazing artist. And I also have my art being sold in a local crystal shop in El Segundo, California.
Wow. Such a perfect fit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like I've said this in almost every interview, but I think it's really important especially when you're running solo, like you said, not to put all your eggs in one basket. Like a lot of people can find like a whole bunch of success on social media,
Mm-hmm.
but with how volatile the algorithm can be, I think it's hard to like put so much trust in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is wise to like kind of build audiences elsewhere, and also, just having your different ways of making money that don't all rely on the people who see your work on Instagram.
Yeah, it's really important, especially because if people can have a chance to see your work in person, they'll probably fall in love with it more
Mhm.
because it's one thing to be able to see it in a picture versus being able to, hold it in your hands and feel it. Um, and my sister, again, Stephanie Boinay Art, that's my sister's Instagram handle. I'll talk about her a lot because she
Ooh,
and I
okay.
bounce our ideas off each other a lot.
Yeah.
We talk about the algorithm quite a bit, and we've built, usually if you're an artist, you can kind of build a really amazing Instagram community of friends and other makers and artists, but it's hard not to base your value off of how many followers you have or how many likes you get, when
Mhm.
really that doesn't matter at all. um, I think that you just need to, if you're having that issue with the algorithm and feeling like you're not doing the right thing. What I've been doing lately is getting on in the morning, engaging for about 20 minutes, and then staying off of Instagram until it's time for me to post, which I only post once a day because I just don't have that much work to post. Like a lot of users do
Mhm.
2 or 3 times. I just don't have that.
A day?
Yeah, I just don't have that much content to post, especially because I've got
Oh
my
my god.
my toddler running around. But I'll
Yeah.
get on at like later in the afternoon, post, stay on for an hour to engage because they say that hour after posting is key. And
Mhm.
then turn it off. And then before bed, another 20 minutes. And I've been doing that for the last few weeks. And it's totally changed how I feel. If I post something and it doesn't get as much engagement and Instagram is slow that day, it doesn't bother me anymore. And I think if you just
Yeah.
set some ground rules for yourself and just work on not putting your value in your number of followers and whatnot, it's just gonna make you feel better as an artist.
Exactly. And in the grand scheme of things, I feel like that's a problem not just with artists. It's a widespread
Mm-hmm.
problem amongst young people in general, kind of basing their worth based on what they see on their feeds compared to other people's feeds.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very healthy to do. You need to know to remove yourself, and also you need to keep in mind that just how you and I are both posting the very best parts of ourselves on social media, so is everyone else.
Yes.
You're not seeing how many failed attempts of a sketch these people have done before they posted this perfectly lit, um, perfectly fine-tuned sketch.
Yes. Yeah. And
The
the other day, so the place we live in a townhome in Manhattan Beach, California, and I don't have a lot of studio space, but I've got what I've got is good for me right now. But the lighting in our place isn't that great. So all my photos are taken outside on the sidewalk. And you wouldn't be able to tell from the photos, but I think it was a couple weeks ago, I decided to show people what it's really like.
I
And
saw.
yeah, I took the photo and then I kind of like filmed around. I said, this is where I take my pictures. There's cars driving by, there's people going down the sidewalk staring at me. And, it's just, yeah, like you said, we only see the perfect picture. We don't see that everybody is like everybody else, messy house or small studio or whatever.
Mhm.
And that's totally okay.
Yeah, and aside from art, and you see also these people's personal Instagrams, and yeah, it can be hard to feel like your life is up to snuff when you see all these people having, like, they post the best pictures of their vacations and like their fancy meals and stuff.
Yeah.
But be it in our Instagram, be it personal, we're just seeing half of the story.
Right. And, you know, just talking about putting value into how many followers we have when we shouldn't, because it can bring you down, and how many
Mm-hmm.
likes you get. I was just thinking about that Halloween advent calendar, and how much joy it brought my son, and how it just made him smile. It was
Mm-hmm.
like his best part of the day, opening it up, like I said. And at the end of the day, I was like, that's why I create art, to make people smile like that, to make them happy. And so if a photo doesn't get X amount of likes, who cares? Because somebody's going to like it. It's going to make somebody smile. And if it makes one person smile, then awesome.
Exactly. And just you need to have kind of your priorities set straight. You can't have your mood and your view of yourself be influenced of by how other people's lives are or look like.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're happy with what you're making of your own life, that at the end of the day is really all that matters.
Yes, it's very important. And sometimes, to help with that, it's good to just get off social media, go down to the park, or, you know, wherever you live, the woods, the forest, the beach, and just sketch and draw, and don't post it. Just do it for you.
Hmm. Yeah, that's something that I've been learning because my Instagram's been dead since forever
Mm-hmm.
because I had to kind of step away for a while because, you know, I'm in the beginning stages of trying to kind of build something because, like I mentioned, I went to school for design, but I actually, right now, I'm working on the business side of things. I work for, like, as a merchandiser on a website, which is very far from where I pictured my life like 6 years ago when I was in school. But I'm kind of trying to move back into it. But one of the things that was affecting me negatively was that I was putting so much weight into social media and just how slowly my following was growing.
Right. And your art's beautiful. Like, I went on your website and I love your colors, and it's just like my colors. I love it.
Thank you so much. But yeah, I totally had to step away and be like, okay, I need to stop. You know, I'll come back when I feel like when I will not let myself be influenced by the numbers. So like I kind of go on Instagram, I see other people's stuff, and I post whenever I'm like feeling it,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm kind of giving myself time to like really separate myself from it.
Yeah. And that's good. And it happens to the best of us. Like, there are artists that I follow that have, you know, 100,000 more followers, and they do the same thing.
Mhm.
They'll step away, or they'll pop on and say, so only 10% of you are seeing my posts. Like, everybody goes through it. And it's just
Mhm.
important to not let yourself get sucked in. And it can be a very positive thing in your life, but there's a balance there. And I just like how you said that you stepped away for a little bit, and you're pursuing this other creative journey that you have, which I love, bringing having these conversations with artists and trying to help other people get started and get on their feet in the art world. And it's okay if like actual painting or drawing or whatever doesn't work out. There are so many ways that you can do it. Like, you can create a podcast and be creative that way.
Exactly. And I actually got this idea. There's this podcast called Don't Keep Your Day Job.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely love it. And I started the podcast because of that, because they were talking about if you can't pursue what you want to do directly because of whatever reason, either you're having trouble building a following or your circumstances are not allowing it right now, there's always like A, B, C, and infinity ways for you to be involved in what you like indirectly.
Yes.
So I'm at a point in my life right now where I can't dedicate myself fully to my traditional art because I'm right now balancing another job and I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. But I still wanted to be involved in the art community. And I found that this is a good way because, like you said, I want to help other people do what I want to do. I want to pursue a life in art. And what better way to do that than to talk to other people who are doing it too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what is so amazing about being a creative person. is that it's easy for us to think of, if we can't do one thing, we can think of a way to do it elsewhere. My friend Ashley Marie Say is an artist, and she runs Bubble Pop Gallery. She opened it up all by herself, and it has a various the themes are various. So she just had a Halloween show. It's mostly based around fan art, and she does it every first Friday of the month, and then it stays up for the month.
Ooh.
But just to see her pursue that, watch her open the gallery and have big success in it. If you think you don't want to do art, you can, there's just so many endless opportunities to stay in the creative world and not have to do art.
Exactly. Like, you don't have to kind of fall into that idea that I feel like the community kind of perpetuates unintentionally, where you're not a true artist if you're not constantly creating art.
Mm-hmm.
But that's completely untrue. You can be an artist who is more interested in sharing other people's art, or, being involved in the art community indirectly without making money off your actual physical art.
Yeah, and artists honestly need people like that. Like, to be honest, this is my first podcast I've ever done, and I'm so excited because I'm such a podcast person. I love listening to all different kinds of podcasts, and it's just nice to have this opportunity, that somebody is out there wanting to talk to artists like this.
Yeah, and I feel like there are a couple of art podcasts out there. Like, I don't know if you listen to The Art Side of Life.
Yeah, I do listen to that one.
Yeah, I love her. She's so fun, and she always she does similar. She interviews artists, but I feel like even then, even two people that are doing something very similar, we still have our ways of, making it our own.
Right.
That's something I feel like young artists need to keep in mind. There's room for everybody in this world. Just because another artist comes in and does, starry night sky art doesn't mean that you're out of business.
Right. Because they're going to be doing it in their own unique style.
Exactly. And I think that is something that gets lost a lot. You see a lot of young people on Instagram. I'm sure as long as you've been on Instagram, you've had at least one or two people being like, oh, you're copying so and so, or your art, or this person's art looks a lot like yours. And it's like that young mentality of you can only be 100% original, but
everybody pulls,
there's room for everyone.
Yeah, and everybody pulls inspiration from everybody,
exactly.
Yeah, it's,
if you don't think Da Vinci and those artists pull inspiration from each other, like, just look at their pieces. There's, consistent themes across everybody's art in different time periods. It's impossible to be 100% original because everything's been done and everything will be redone over and over again.
Yeah, and it's like you said, there's room for everybody, and especially in this world, I'm really grateful that nowadays, like, being a female artist isn't such a taboo thing. Because it was a man's world for such a long time. And there's so many great male artists out there. I'm not trying to dog them or anything. But
no, of course.
Just to be able to build up each other as artists is just more important than being so competitive. Like, my friend Christina Yu at Cheery Human Studios, that's her Instagram handle. Sorry, I'm dropping a lot of names in here.
Oh, no, feel free.
She and I have become quite good friends over the last year and a half, and we've shared a few booths at events. And when one person makes a sale and the other doesn't, we don't sit there stewing, being like, oh, well, I didn't make the sale, but she did. We're excited and happy that the other person has a little bit of success, even if we don't. And that's how it should be. You shouldn't compare yourself to somebody else. You should, be alongside them and lift them up.
And these friendships are good for you in so many ways because, like you said, you lift each other up, but I'm sure you also provide support to each other. If your art friend is struggling in an area that you succeed in, you would probably help them like you would any other friend in your life.
Yeah, and that's been she and I talk about it all the time, how blessed we feel to have found each other. If you're up and coming in the art world, um, if you can find somebody who you can kind of share things with and vent to things about specific to
Mm-hmm.
the art world, because it's been invaluable to me. I know that she has helped me on numerous occasions, whether it's where should I get this made, do you have any leads, or she'll come to me and ask the same thing. And not a lot of people share information like that, because as artists you work
Mm-hmm.
really hard to find where you get your pins made or where you get your prints done.
Of
But if you
course.
can make some close friends and kind of give and take as far as that's concerned, it helps a lot when you try and navigate the waters together.
Yeah. And you have to be open to, because it's not only about using each other for knowledge, but like you started in the beginning, like that, I feel like that support of somebody who knows your struggles as an artist is very important, because it's not, being an artist is a lot more common nowadays, but it's still not super mainstream.
Yes.
And I feel like the things we go through are very unique to our situations, and having someone to talk to is just so important.
It is. And I feel like I would go crazy if I didn't have her or my sister to talk to about it, because it is very unique. And I talk to my husband too, but he's not totally 100% in it like my sister and my friend are. So there's some things
Hmm.
that I could talk to them about and maybe get different feedback.
Oh yeah, I have that all the time. My boyfriend is in science.
I love
So
science.
um yeah, he's in marine biology, so whenever I talk to him about like my art woes, he's like can't relate. He tries to like kind of get it, and he tries to offer advice, and I'm like, "Oh my god, you're totally coming at this from someone who totally doesn't get it." Like, thanks for caring, but you don't get it.
Yeah, it is really helpful to have someone on your side who's in the creative business.
Yeah. So I guess wrap things up, I have some fun
Sure.
questions for you. So, I know that in your art you are really drawn to like deep blues and like these cool color schemes. But what are some colors that you like but you feel like you don't get to work with them that often?
I would probably say pink and purple. I do a little bit of purple. I kind of stick to the blues and the greens. But
Mhm.
I really love the pinks, the bright pinks and the purples. And I do actually quite like red. And I should probably do warmer color galaxies, but I just feel like the blues and the greens work best for that.
Yeah, I really like the color schemes you pull. They're like very. It's weird. One of the things that trips me up so much about your petrified wood pieces is that you make it look like digital colors. Like I don't know if you know what I mean. Like it looks very vibrant. Looks like digital art, but you did it traditionally.
That would be the paint that I use. I use Holbein acrylic gouache. A lot of
I'm writing that
yeah,
down.
a lot of artists that work in animation that do like concept art for that use that. So it's Holbein, and then the type is acrylic gouache. And I love it because I grew up painting in watercolor and acrylic, and acrylic gouache is a
Hmm.
perfect mix between the two. So you can water it down really nicely to get washes like watercolor, or you can keep it really thick and opaque like acrylic, and then it dries like acrylic, so it won't run if it gets wet. And it's
Hmm.
just super vibrant paint and makes the colors really bright. And I just always have loved really deep gem tones is what I'm drawn to.
Yeah, I noticed. I've been trying to get into acrylic gouache. It's so different because I did grow up painting in acrylic, and then I just started teaching myself watercolor maybe about a year ago.
Mhm.
But like acrylic gouache is so strange because it's like it's kind of like gouache, but it like you have to be careful because if it
And
dries, like you can't just reactivate
and
it.
it dries
That's the
so
part that
fast. It
me
dries
up.
so fast. You have to work quickly with
Oh
it.
my god, it does. Like first lesson for anyone interested is like if you're using acrylic gouache, like definitely pour out less than you think you need.
Yes, exactly. A little can go a long way. And, like sometimes I have such a bad, I just waste a lot of paint. I'll just like squeeze out a ton
Me
and use a
too.
little bit. And then you walk away for 20 minutes and you come back and it's totally dry. So you need to be careful
I
because those little
know.
tubes aren't that cheap either. But that's why it's perfect
Mm-mm.
for what I do. I work very small, so I don't use a lot of paint, which is what I like. I will say though, for acrylic gouache, I don't use it the way a lot of people use it. A lot of people use it with the dry brush technique. So, you
Mm-hmm.
you just take the brush, paint to brush basically with no water, and you just kind of use it that way and it gives a really lovely texture on the paper. But I'm so used to acrylic and watercolor that I kind of use it the way you would use those and just combine it.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, but I use that on my petrified woods, and if
Wow, and that
it
sticks.
does, it wouldn't if I didn't put resin over top. So
Yeah,
yeah,
of
I cast it
course.
in resin at the end, not only to give it that glossy finish, but to protect the painting. Otherwise, it would scratch right off.
Oh yeah, it would totally would.
Yeah.
Oh wait, that was a pun.
Nice.
I can't help myself. I guess to wrap things up, do you have any final words of advice you'd like to share with not only young artists but people in general who want to kind of break into art as a career?
Yeah, I think that if you're breaking into art, just keep creating because it can be very discouraging when you don't find immediate success. And that's the key here is it's not going to be immediate. A lot of the times you see successful artists on Instagram that will post and say, "Who knew that a year ago I'd be selling X amount of pieces like every time?" And that's
Mm-hmm.
great for them, but not the reality for most people. I've had my Instagram since 2015, like end of 2015, and I think I just
Mm-hmm.
hit 5,000 followers after you know these years that I've had it. And it's because a lot of
Yeah.
that time I took trying to find my style versus trying to build my Instagram. And now that I have my style, I can build my Instagram. But just know, like,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of a slow burn. You just need to keep creating and you just need to put yourself out there, contact lots of different people, lots of different markets and shows. Don't be afraid to talk to people and and just, you know, don't get yourself down if you don't see immediate success. I just feel like today, uh, everything is so fast, like instant satisfaction. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not how it normally is. It usually takes time to build. And, I had a long career in t shirt design. And before that, I designed for bands for a while and then made this switch to my own art. So I've had a long career in art and I'm just a baby at getting my own shop up. But it's good because it's given me a lot of good experience and a lot of patience and a lot of time to hone my skill.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something very, very good to keep in mind as a young artist. It's not instant. None of these people that you admire like grew overnight.
Hmm.
I mean, some have, but honestly, for sometimes it's luck of the draw with the internet, what goes viral and whatnot. But for the most part, everybody's working at it at their own pace, and you just have to kind of mind your own work and just keep going,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's what you need to do. Just be just be authentic, be yourself, do what inspires you. Don't try to, you know, push yourself into someone else's mold. You just got to be authentic and be your own.
Yeah, completely agree. Anyways, thank you so much for giving me your time and giving us, such great words to live by. You were awesome. I had a blast talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me on here. I was super excited to talk to you and I can't wait to listen to the other podcast episodes you have.
This interview with Danielle was one that I was really looking forward to ever since she agreed to be on the show, because she's one of the artists that I've been really looking up to lately. So this was really exciting for me to do. One thing I keep often forgetting is to ask them to give you their social media links. So they will be down in the show notes if you want clickable links, as well as my website. But you can find her work at Danielle Boinay, spelled just like in the title, on Instagram. And then she also has a website under the same name, which is danielleboinay.com. Now, why don't we recap some of the lessons that Danielle shared with us today? Of course, all these episodes have tons of inspiration and advice, but I'm just going to narrow it down to 3 things you can take away today. 1, if you're having a tough time finding your style, why don't you just find a signature element that you like and include it in as many of your pieces as you can. This ties your work together and it kind of puts you on a path to finding your style. For Danielle, she does starry skies in pretty much all of her pieces, and it makes it recognizable to her. So maybe that's one way you can try to find your own style. 2, make art friends that you can rely on for support and advice, especially other people who are about at the same level as you are. I'm pretty sure this is advice that you've heard in past episodes, and you're going to hear it again in future episodes, but it's so important. Try to make art friends who are, in a similar level of experience as you, because it gives you someone who can relate to your struggles, and it gives you someone to offer support, and, it's just so fun also to share with someone who has your same interests and is on the same level as you. So yeah, make art friends. And 3, don't be afraid to make things that are very different from what you usually see. In Danielle's case, she makes art on petrified wood. How freaking cool is that? But you never see that. But she was like, what the heck, I like nature, I like art, I'm going to paint on petrified wood. And guess what? It's been going really well for her. So if you think you have some sort of weird out there idea for something you'd like to do with your art, why don't you just try it? It might end up being really successful, and even if it's not, at least you're doing something that you really wanted to do and something like cool and unique to yourself. So either way, it's a win-win. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I had a blast in this interview, as per usual. But yeah, follow me on Instagram at the Art Journey Pod. I'm posting stuff over there, like quotes from the shows, and I'm starting to even post sneak peeks of future guests up in the IG stories. So if you're interested in stuff like that, come hang out, come follow me, and we're gonna have a blast. And then for things like detailed show notes and clickable links and pictures and all that fun stuff, they're always in the show notes here on the app, but you can also find them in one central location over at theartjourneypodcast.com. And because, I've already spent an hour talking, you know what? I'm going to add my own personal plug. If you want to see my art and get to know kind of me on a more personal level, why don't you follow my art Instagram at Alex Agosto. That's spelled ALEKSAGOSTO. And I have a website under the same name, alexagosto.com. So I hope you really enjoyed this episode, guys, and I cannot wait to see you guys again next time for the next interview and the next episode. Have a wonderful week, and I hope the holidays are treating you well. Bye.